G'day there, welcome along to State of It for another episode with these beautiful people. We've got Moses, Emma, Sasha, Mark and Zach, and we're actually at Zach's fine establishment, Flux. Thanks for having us, Zach. This is amazing. Very swanky, eh?
Anytime, especially between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. on Fridays.
Ooh, love it. Love it. Now we're here today to talk about a very specific topic, but one that is quite a big one in bands and acts in Christchurch, not just Christchurch, but around New Zealand, probably the world, I don't know. Anyway, and what we're going to talk about today is bands or acts, I should say, charging or not charging for an entry fee, and does that impact other bands who actually do want to make some money out of this whole crazy world of performing for money and trying to get some cash in? Let's start with Em and Mose. What do you reckon about this?
That's a loaded question.
So we'll do it.
There's three. There's probably about three key factors. So there's the venue and the way that they operate and their culture, their regulars, and the way that the whole kaupapa, whatever they're running.
Yeah.
Then there's the audience. Then there's the culture within the broader community. So overseas, for example, it's you turn up to a bar and you just pay a cover charge. Even in Melbourne, it's just ingrained. It's like, you don't think about it.
Even if there's nothing going on there.
Right.
Pay a cover charge, but I'm sure everyone here has worked the door before or been at a gig and some locals turn up to their bar that they used to go and it's like, oh, what's happening? Like $10 each. Yeah. Oh, nah. Yeah. And there'll be like 6 bands on.
So
there's this disconnect between the perception of the value of live music. So,
well, that's kind of what we're talking about, the value of live music.
It's pretty loaded. There's a lot to unpack.
There is, yeah.
I feel like, as a general rule, if you're an artist and you're playing your original music to an audience, you should charge for it.
Yeah.
If you're playing covers, then that should be free. That's more like a bar. You head along to a bar and just have a good time.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be,
It's sort of something that I've found too, as a performer, like, you kind of have to kind of grade your value as you progress with what you're achieving. So, if anyone has put the time and investment into self-producing a record, if you're getting some traction at radio, or if you're able to, to pull a bigger crowd, that kind of thing, I think that's where you start having to try and measure what your value is, so that people who are coming don't, you can't be too cheap or too expensive. It's a real balancing act.
How do you value your...
It's pretty hard. Trial and error.
I want to buy a
people don't turn up, you charge too
like
much.
$300 a ticket and see how many people show up, because that's going to be good.
Yeah. I've heard like business people or marketers maybe saying, a certain item was on the shelf for like $20, but someone sold it for $60 or $80 or some stupid amount, and the perception of that value, with the price went up. People were buying it more than the, sell out rather than the $20 item, that kind of thing.
Well,
so
the reverse applies. If you don't charge on the door, then the value that people perceive the show to be worth is lesser.
Yeah.
So the biggest problem.
In the future, they might not come to it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is you want to build an audience from a show that will then create a fan base to keep coming to shows, and then that will grow and multiply.
Yeah.
You want to service an area. So if you don't charge for a show, the idea of the vibe or the perception of the people in the crowd, they don't believe that they're there for a purpose. They believe that it's just somewhere that they can go and hang out and talk and do their own thing. So I think that you increase the show's intensity, so to speak, value, as soon as you charge for it.
Yeah. So bands that... Because I could imagine a band, like a new band or an act, going, I'm brand new, I don't really have much of a fan base, so I can't really charge anything, but I need people to come and see me, so I'm not going to charge them to up my chances of having an audience. But is that a bad thing to start doing?
Can you look at it the same way as though, as long as you do start charging eventually, there are certain products that come out that are cheaper than they're supposed to be, just to get people along to them, to try them at first.
Or like at supermarkets, and you just taste test the cheeses.
Yeah.
You get that little bit for free.
Yeah, but you got to pay
for it if you want the whole thing.
And it depends on the venue as well. If you've got a venue that's specifically set up as a live music venue, like Blue Smoke's a good example.
Yeah.
You pay...
The artist has to pay.
You pay the venue.
Yeah.
You pay the venue to play.
Yeah, you have to play it. You're basically
You're
booking the space, you're hiring the space, and then you take your take on the door.
Yeah.
But there'll be other venues around where it's just comes down to a relationship, and it could be as fluid as a meeting, and go, chuck a door charge on, you might take some in the bar.
Yeah. What's the most common sort of a model, do you think, with playing in a bar? That's, let's just say it's quite a big one, isn't it? Because there's two sort of...
Most venues like you'll have to run a cover charge because there's no guarantees. That'd be for, I'd say, a good 80%. Well, unless they act touring it with someone that they know is going to bring value to the venue.
Yeah.
And then they'll run a ticket, I guess, to offset the cost of the guarantee.
Yeah. But would it be quite unlikely that a bar, especially around Christchurch, would pay an act to be there because they know they're going to bring in...
Once upon a time, there was the Dux Deluxe model.
Which is that?
Where they paid guarantees to everybody.
Right.
It wasn't high though, was it?
Was it a
It wasn't
retainer?
a high
or something?
guarantee.
No, it's pretty low.
It was like a few $100 or something.
But it was just kind of, they tried that model and it sort of worked for years, but I don't know. That was...
But
It made it a bit challenging, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, if you were going to go and do a ticketed show somewhere, then...
Yeah.
And I also think that, like, you know, if you are starting out, the best way to do it is to team up with two other, you know, acts that are kind of like you, because then you're all taking that hit all at once.
Yeah.
And I think also that starting out musicians need to realise that, again, they've got their own music business. It is a business. You've got to take a hit at the start to get going.
Yeah.
And so, and I think a lot of people don't get that. They don't get that you've got to like actually invest in your product. And that if you are playing with a band, you need to pay your band, and you are not taking anything. And if you get through your first tour, like, you know, not like making sure that you paid everyone, the accommodation, the band, everything. But say you can pay yourself. I know that's not great, but if you can do that, that's amazing. Like, so it's just understanding that, and at some stage you do need to get paid, and you will get paid, but you still also need to invest in your brand and your business.
Yeah.
Have a reason for people to show up.
Yeah. God, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, starting any business, I suppose. You got to like who you're selling to, but then you're selling with music. You're almost selling a product that you don't know people are going to actually like. Without like, you know, and it's not like you can go, oh, let's make a brand of beer because I know people love IPA, so it's going to sell well. It's, well, what are you going to do? Copy someone's music because you know their music sells well?
It's like saying I'm going to make X genre because X genre is popular at the moment, but if you have shitty songs, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think there's always people that will like something, and I think people also like watching people try. I don't even think necessarily it's always about the final product. I think a lot of the time people just like seeing people give it a go.
Yeah.
So I think, you kind of just got to back yourself.
And
even
often
if
a
it's
live
not that
show
flash.
can be, often a live show can be a better translator for you than your recordings.
Yeah, and you're right, you buy into the process as a fan. If you see someone at their first gig and they're a bit dinky and they get better, you're invested in it.
I was there when they
part
first,
of the journey.
and they sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually quite true because, like, I think a lot of people, even though recording facilities and gear is so accessible these days, right? You can do a lot yourself. I think that polished end product is still, there's a lot of artists out there just not getting how polished it needs to be. Right? So if they can be playing live more and actually, you know, being out and about and actually getting the audience that way and not worrying about getting the music out so quickly, then, you know, maybe there's a
Feeds on.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally, and it's the other interesting thing about that is all the talented people that all of us know, so many of them who are just amazing musicians or amazing songwriters and never did the thing.
Never released a single thing, right?
And for me, a big part of that was always like coming up. I was listening to my favourite records and favourite albums and being like, it sounds so amazing. I didn't have an appreciation that there's an entire team. And there's people who have often been working for like 40 years, 20, 30 to get there. And it was just like, well, I'm sitting here on my dinky little acoustic guitar. This kind of sounds not that good, so shit. So then I'm just like, well, I'm not going to go out and play it. But then you don't develop. You don't build. So
And I think that comes back to the whole investment thing, right? You've got to invest in your business.
100%.
I was talking to someone about DJing, actually, Andy Pulsar.
Stalwart.
And yeah, he was just like going on about how, like, you know, kids these days are just like learning how to DJ on YouTube or whatever. And it's the same as like, you know, being a producer, like just learning it from YouTube. But there's a point where you actually need to go and train. You actually need to understand how many beats are in a bar, and you know, like all that sort of stuff that is really important. And you actually need to hire, like, you know, a great producer. You actually need to have a good mic at some stage. You know?
I used to have that conversation a lot with young bands when I used to work for like a music trust, trying to give a bit of music education to, you know, kickstart kind of people and it was trying to get that message across that like this is going to be an investment.
Yeah.
You're investing in your future. It's like you want to go and train to be a doctor. You're going to spend years doing that, and it's going to cost you a shitload of money.
Yeah.
But yet people kind of the perceived value of like, oh, I'm just going to learn to play the guitar and be successful.
Yeah.
And it's like getting a message across. It's a long road and it's an expensive one.
Mm.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts around that, unless you're one of those the 1%ers that somehow get discovered.
Yeah.
Throws a lot of
Which
cash
you
at
can't. Which you can't.
Well,
So weird.
I think there's a lot of perception from young people as well that that those 1%ers, the people that break through, they just all of a sudden end up there in a very short amount of time because they're amazing.
Mm.
But I know so many, especially like electronic producers and stuff and they've been through 3 different pseudonyms or 3 different like names before they even crack the right one. They're 15 years, they're like 45 before they're touring the world. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
For most people. Apart from
Imagine if you could get discovered as a surgeon, eh? You don't have to go to medical school for someone discovered that
You start giving it a go.
natural
Pretty good at
talents
thinking
for
about
it.
it.
Like, you learned it off YouTube. It just doesn't work that way. Like,
Watch a lot of crazy
every
anime.
breakthrough artist, every overnight fame is actually years and years of work and probably teams of people.
Yeah. And just because you
It
only
seems
heard
to
about
come
them
out of
a month
nowhere
ago.
because you don't know them personally, so you don't know what they've done.
That's
like,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
And I think musicians and artists are inherently leaders, but you're a minority, and one of the other big things you're up against is your family and your immediate social friends. And if your buddy who just like can't tell the difference between AC/DC and Pendulum, it's all just music.
Yeah.
It's like, that sounds shit. You're just gonna be like, oh. Your mum doesn't come to your gig.
Yeah.
Like there's all these things that is like have massive impacts when you're young and you're trying to express yourself through music.
But I also think on the flip side
Why
of
do
it
we
is
do it?
Oh my god! I just realised.
It's actually horrible.
having a non-supportive family or community, like you know, when your parents are like, well, that doesn't make. Why would you bother? It's a one-shot chance. Like, it's not going to make money. Why don't you focus on other things?
Yeah.
Like, that rhetoric is so harmful to creatives.
And that's seriously one of the main reasons why Soul was created, was just to try and break that and try and teach people like it's a business.
Yeah. It
And you
literally
need
is
to be
an
good.
industry.
You know, you need to be.
And do you teach your students, or at least sort of advise them on that whole kind of thing of like, oh, my music's shit, like, you know, what we're talking about is the value of music, but do you talk to them about that kind of the mental value of their own music and that it's actually worth something?
Yeah,
something that deep?
absolutely. Like as soon as I think trying to get them to understand, okay, you need to invest this in yourself. But as soon as your music's up, it's available to be streamed, which means that you get money from X, Y, Z. You know, and like if you put the right amount of thought process, everything into marketing right and the quality of it, you're going to get money straight away. You're going to get gigs, you're going to get things. So trying to get them to get over that first hump, to then, you know, see the outcome and something that they'll be getting money for the rest of their lives if they do it well.
Work hard.
Yeah. But it's got to be quality,
It's got
right?
to be quality.
Yeah, there's 2 things happening there, especially if you're going from being a youth who's never had a job or worked for someone in a business, or especially if their parents don't own a business, you just have this idea of where you go and get a job and you just work for someone else and your time is your rate, and out in the real world that's very standardised. But with music you're trying to tackle 2 things. You're trying to tackle this idea of like being an entrepreneur but also it being a business.
You're a business and startup,
that's
that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's the same as if you're selling insulation or if you had a sweet new knife that you want to market to people. It's the exact same thing. And yeah, I think if you want to get into being a performing artist, you need to look at it that way. There's no other way around it. Yeah.
I wonder if there could be a rate card, like a rate card for new bands. Is that something that would work? You know, so you like it would probably have to be a tiered system, right?
Is this for live shows?
Yeah, live shows. Yeah, like so that a bar would know. All right, I want some live music. I can have X band that have been around for a year. Like let's say it's a year tier system. 1 year and then 5 years and then more. Or maybe it's based on followers or sales or whatever, streams or whatever. But could we make like could we all make a rate card that's, you know, X number of hours equals this much for this band of this tier? Would that work?
I think it flies out of control too quickly because I mean, well, so for instance, we definitely consider that there's a bottom rate, like there's an entry level rate for an initial act, and I think there's like almost, I don't know, there is that.
organically.
Yeah, totally. But then once that business, the artist, starts to grow, well, their value is what they bring to the table. So that rate card is more or less dependent on what that business wants to charge from that point onwards and what they feel like their value is.
Yeah, right.
So it's a negotiation the whole way through. And the unfortunate thing is about a negotiation is usually it depends on who you're negotiating with as to how good a deal you can get.
And I think another, I might have brought this up before, but it's just been on my mind so much lately. It's, you've got the venue, you've got the artists, you've got, generally that's it. And what we could certainly do with more of it's the people bringing it all together. So your promoters or your booking agents or your managers.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find a manager in New Zealand, whereas over in Australia, managers will approach bands who have multiple managers approach them, and they kind of get to pick and choose. Whereas over here, it's like, well, there's no managers.
Yeah.
So it's just
Being a manager is seen as
actual
a
manager.
viable, music manager is seen as a viable kind of career in Australia. I think there's a lot of people in New Zealand wouldn't even consider being a music manager.
Yeah.
Well, because we don't have the population.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for no money.
Economies of
It
scale.
sounds cool,
Yeah.
but
It's the same, it's lots of work to be an artist. So you've got to be on this, like, pick your team, you're on that journey together, you all make the investment.
Bloody good. All right. Well, hey, thanks very much for watching, everyone. Thank you very much for your insightful insight. Oh, that's a good pause. I'm going to rectify this. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to State of It channel. Thank you. And we'll see you at the next one. Okay, bye.